What's up, everybody? Couch Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Overwatch video. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down the new experimental patch notes that has a lot of crazy changes. Changes to Roadhog, changes to Genji, Doomfist. I mean, there's a lot to cover in this patch, and it's one of the more impactful patches in a while. So we're going to jump right in. But real quickly, as a content update to this channel, we're going to be stepping a little bit away from guides. We're still going to be doing updates on patches and things like that, but we're going to be doing a lot more entertaining content. Things like Hacker Hunt, Guess the Rank, and other types of videos where I'm going to be using my webcam and making more entertaining content. But if you have any suggestions for what you want to see, let me know down below. But let's jump into the actual patch. Starting off with Doomfist, Meteor Strike now speeds up the cooldown rate of his abilities by 100% while in the air. Now, the developers had this to say about it, quote, "The accelerated cooldown times will enable more fluidity when setting up Doomfist combos when using the Meteor Strike ultimate." Now, honestly, this is a really big deal on Doomfist. You're going to be able to get a lot of your cooldowns much quicker, which is really good for, like they said, the fluidity of your rollout. So you go and use all your abilities, you ult, and then you want all your cooldowns back before you slam down again. But now that downtime is going to be a little bit quicker because of how much faster your abilities are being generated or getting off cooldown, and you're going to be able to go back into your combo much quicker, which is definitely going to allow more chains with Doomfist, and I think it's going to feel a lot better. Now, moving on to the next change in the video. Holy, my cybernetic boy is getting a buff. Shuriken damage increased from 28 to 29 per shuriken. I'm going to talk about that back in a second. Dragon Blade got reduced though from 120 per slash to 110, and the developers had this to say about Genji. The shuriken damage increase doesn't sound like a lot, but it crosses a threshold or breakpoint against some enemy targets, enabling them to be eliminated with one less attack landed. To help balance out the increased power for his primary weapon, we're reducing the damage of the Dragon Blade ultimate, which is also a breakpoint against some targets when being damage boosted. Now, most combos it actually doesn't mess with, specifically the Dragon Blade. It's not going to do that much worse, except for one specific scenario where you're either attacking a discorded target or you're being damage boosted and you're slicing a squishy, someone like a Tracer or someone like a mini diva. That's actually not going to kill them. It's going to leave them at a very, very low health. I think it's 4 health. But as long as you know this ahead of time, you're not going to be playing for it. You're typically going for that slash dash anyway, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. And for the most part, what this patch does is it takes a little bit of the power level away from the Dragon Blade and it puts it to the shuriken. And the fact that they're upping the shuriken by 1 damage, that's gonna matter a lot. There's a lot of scenarios with Genji where a target just barely gets out of your grasp, and adding a little bit more damage is really going to push him to the next level. Now, I definitely don't think that this is gonna push Genji to like the best DPS or anywhere close to that. He's still gonna be a rather niche pick when specifically talking about his place in the higher tier meta. That being said, I think that it's an amazing thing to get some of that power level away from the Dragon Blade, make Genji less of a blade bot, and give him more power in his base kit or more neutral game. But let me know if you agree or disagree or what you think about Genji in the comments down below. Now, for the next change we got to talk about, it's actually Moira. Biotic Grasp, self-healing increased from 20 to 24 health per second. The developers had this to say about it. Moira has been recently underperforming a little bit. This increase to her self-healing with Biotic Grasp will help improve her survivability while in range to recharge her healing resources. Now, this is kind of out of the blue. I'm not entirely sure if Moira needed a buff, but this is going to be nice for you Moira mains to, like they said, be a little bit more survivable. Having that self-healing increase when you're using your Biotic Grasp, that's actually going to be something a little bit interesting when dueling enemies or just trying to barely stay alive and get peel from your allies. Definitely going to be a mostly unfelt change, but for you Moira mains, you're all going to be happy nonetheless. Now, moving on to the next character that we got to talk about is Roadhog, who got an interesting buff. Now passively grants 25% less ultimate charge. So the developers had this to say about it. Roadhog tanks for his allies by being a large and threatening target with high durability, which draws a lot of fire from the enemy team. We're reducing the amount of ultimate charge he provides to better enable him in this role without as much of a downside for his own team. Now, for those of you who are tired of Roadhogs constantly feeding the enemy ult charge, this is the solution for you. This is not for Roadhog mains. This is for everyone who is stuck with Roadhog. No, but all joking joking aside, this is good. Roadhog has been pretty bad for a while. He's been one of the least picked tanks, and honestly, I think that he needed something like this. And honestly, when we're talking about Roadhog, he's a character that really wants to be able to tank damage, get a cheeky hook, and then get out with his breather, but he shouldn't get punished overly by it. He doesn't want to be a character that, you know, he gets that kill, he gets out, but the cost is like 50% ult charge on the enemy soldier's ult. That is not really what you want every single time you're getting a kill. And I do think that this is something that should have been in Roadhog for a while, and I'm glad they're finally adding it. Now, the next character I gotta talk about is Soldier 76. Heavy pulse rifle, damage increased from 19 to 20, biotic field healing reduced from 40 to 35 per second. The developers had this to say about it. The damage per shot for the heavy pulse rifle has been adjusted several times now, as it is an important tuning point for Soldier 76. It was last reduced when his weapon spread was replaced by recoil to help account for the increased accuracy potential through the recent reduction to his damage fall off at long range. It's reasonable to increase his damage output once again while pulling some of the power out of his area of effect healing utility. Now, while I'm a little bit sad about the biotic field getting changed from 40 to 35 health per second, I do think that he really needed that damage increase, especially when we talk about that nerf that really affected him pretty hard, if I'm being honest. He basically did no damage. He was like shooting a freaking pellet gun from range, but his tactical visor almost made up for it in some ways because it had no fall off, but it just simply wasn't enough. And this increase is actually going to be good. Yeah, he's going to have a little bit less survivability, but his overall DPS is going to be about the same from range as it was before the range DPS or hit scan nerf. And now from mid to close ranges, he's going to be doing a lot of freaking damage, and that's going to be great for Soldier 76, especially when compared to every other hit scan option, they all have some sort of competitive edge against him. And even Ashe, Widow, McCree, these are all typically better picks than Soldier. So I do think something that pushes him up in power level, and then he's a character that has that mobility, has that survivability, and he's now a more competitive option, buffing him in this way, and I like that. Now, moving on to the last change, which might just be the most important change in this entire patch, and it's definitely gonna get rid of one of the most ridiculous play patterns in the entire game of Overwatch. Can't believe it hasn't gotten fixed into this point, and its Wrecking Ball Grappling Claw now begins on cooldown after respawning. Now, if you don't understand why that's so important, I'm gonna break it down in just a second. Let's talk about the other changes and what the developers have to say. We're gonna revisit it. Adaptive Shield's cast time was reduced from 0.2 seconds to 0 seconds. Duration increased from 7 to 9 seconds. So that's actually a pretty big deal. Minefield proximity mines no longer stick to walls. That's a little interesting. Now, the developers had this to say about it. Wrecking Ball is the fastest hero in the game, which works well for his disruptive playstyle. However, to reduce his contribution to objective stalling, his Grappling Claw ability will now start on cooldown upon respawning. Proximity mines will no longer attach to walls, as it resulted in accidental bunched up placements out of range from most enemy targets, and more often than any intentional clever uses. Now, let's take it from the bottom down. First, let's talk about the minefield. I think that this overall is going to be a good thing. I think that a lot of times Hammonds are trying to put them down on the floor in a very specific way, and sometimes they stick to the ceiling, sometimes they stick to the wall, and it just completely messes up the minefield and there's a big gap. Definitely not preferred. And then sometimes you're playing Genji and you die to like 3 freaking mines on the ceiling for no goddamn reason. Why are they there? Definitely some RNG involved. Definitely something that I think is probably for the best. Maybe that 1 out of like 100 times you did it on purpose, it was really cool, but most of the time not really, and I think it messed up a lot more minefields than it helped. Adaptive shields, now that's actually pretty cool. Being able to happen instantly is going to allow you to get out of those sticky situations a little bit better. Right when like a flashbang comes out, you can activate it like right away. It's going to be a little bit easier for you to get this off, like instead of getting hooked and killed instantly as the hook comes out, you could even activate it right away. I know there's ping issues and things like that, but overall this is definitely a nice buff to Wrecking Ball. But the grappling hook change is the one that I am so freaking happy about. Even though I understand Wrecking Ball has a place as a character to stall to, it was 100% a character way too powerful at stalling. Being able to just swap to him as a tank and then roll out instantly onto the point and just stall it out for so long until your allies come back as a Widow and get a headshot, or your Doomfist comes out, gets a rollout, gets a kill, and then all of a sudden the enemy just can't do anything about it. And against some compositions without CC and giant amounts of burst damage, Wrecking Ball felt unkillable. And the fact that you could win a fight convincingly, wipe the enemy team, the first tank that dies because he was on the front line, he died, he swaps the Wrecking Ball, he comes back, and because of your composition, you're completely and you can't do anything about it. He's gonna stall at the point, and it could be very frustrating. And I know for some of you lower ranked players, you have a situation where you're like, hey, main tank, you have to swap to Wrecking Ball right now, or else we're not gonna be able to touch. He doesn't swap, and you lose. That's definitely frustrating as well. But all of that is gone, and I think that overall it's gonna make more competitive gameplay that it's just gonna feel better. But let me know if you agree with me down below, and definitely go check out the GameLeap website if you want in-depth guides over all of this, all these characters, very specified niche guys that are really gonna help you improve. Go check them out. And of course, I love your faces. Thank you so much for coming by. I'll see y'all next time.